I never thought I'd be the type of person to create binders full of my dead ex-husband's affair evidence and distribute them at a church. But when 6 elderly women cornered my sobbing 15-year-old daughter in a public market to berate her for being unchristian, something inside me shattered. The restraint I'd been clinging to for months dissolved into white-hot rage. They had no idea what my girls had endured, discovering their father's infidelity, losing him suddenly, and then being blamed by their grandparents for his death. That day at the market wasn't just the final straw, it was the moment I decided, no more protecting the dead at the expense of the living. I used to have what most would consider a normal life. Married for almost 2 decades, 2 beautiful daughters, a decent job that made me the primary breadwinner. My ex-in-laws always had traditional views about family, marriage, and a woman's place in the world. I tolerated their passive-aggressive comments at holiday gatherings, how they would praise their son for allowing me to work while he sacrificed by handling less of our household finances. It never seemed worth the argument. Their church was central to their identity, a conservative congregation where marriage was sacred, divorce was shameful, and appearances mattered above all else. For years I attended services with them on major holidays, nodding politely through sermons about wifely submission and family values, while my daughters squirmed beside me. My ex appreciated the peace it kept, and I believed in picking my battles. When my older daughter turned 16 last year, I noticed a shift in my husband's behavior. Late nights at work, mysterious weekend commitments, password changes on his phone. The classic signs were all there, but I refused to see them. The truth has a way of finding you, though, especially when you're trying to hide from it. It wasn't me who discovered his affair. It was my daughters. They found messages on his laptop while using it for schoolwork, explicit conversations, declarations of love, and plans for their future together. Photos that seared into my girls' young minds. Their father wasn't just having an affair. He had another family, twin baby boys with his mistress. 2 little lives kept secret from us. My daughters came to me, devastated and shaking. I'll never forget the look in their eyes, that terrible moment when childhood innocence shatters completely. They showed me everything, and my world collapsed around me. 17 years of marriage gone. The family we'd built, irreparably broken. I filed for divorce immediately. My ex moved out, alternating between begging me to reconsider and blaming me for driving him to cheat. His parents were furious, not at him, but at me. In their eyes, I had failed as a wife if their son had sought comfort elsewhere. They called incessantly, showed up at our home unannounced, and even cornered my daughters at school to tell them they needed to forgive their father and keep the family together. We were 4 months into divorce proceedings when the accident happened. A rainy night, a slick road, and a curve taken too fast. My ex-husband and his mistress were both killed instantly. I received the call at 2 a.m. from a solemn-voiced police officer and found myself in the impossible position of waking my daughters to tell them their father was dead. Grief is complicated under normal circumstances. But grieving someone who has betrayed you creates a toxic, confusing, emotional cocktail. My daughters were devastated, angry, and relieved all at once. They cried for the father they had once adored while simultaneously raging at the man who had lied to them all. I held them through panic attacks and nightmares, arranged therapy sessions, and tried to create a semblance of stability in our new reality. And then there were the twins, 2 6-month-old boys suddenly orphaned by the same accident that took my daughter's father. The same accident that killed the woman who had helped destroy our family. What do you do with that? How do you explain to your traumatized teenage daughters that these innocent babies are connected to them by blood, yet born from the ultimate betrayal? My ex-in-laws had their own answer. They wanted everything: custody of the twins, partial custody of my daughters, and to move into our home to help with the children. They spoke about all of us as if we were their possessions, their legacy to control. When I refused, the real warfare began. A good Christian wife would honor her husband's parents, my former mother-in-law told me at the funeral, her voice brittle with judgment. It's what he would have wanted. What he would have wanted. As if his wants should still matter after he betrayed us all. I bit my tongue, focused on supporting my daughters through the horrific experience of burying their father, while his other family, the secret one, grieved nearby. The custody battle for the twins was mercifully brief. Neither my ex-in-laws nor I were the baby's closest relatives. A cousin of my ex-husband stepped forward, a stable, loving woman with children of her own who opened her home to the twins without hesitation. The courts quickly granted her custody, and I felt genuine relief. Those boys deserved love and stability, not to be pawns in an ugly family war. My ex-in-laws didn't see it that way. In their minds, I had stolen their grandchildren, all 4 of them. They began a campaign to gain custody of my daughters, claiming I was an unfit mother who had driven their son to seek comfort elsewhere and was now denying them their rightful place in my daughters' lives. The court documents were filled with lies, that I was unstable, that I worked too much, that I had kept them from forming relationships with their grandchildren. When those tactics failed, they switched to emotional manipulation, showing up at my daughter's school events uninvited, sending guilt-laden letters about how they wouldn't be around much longer, and just wanted to know their granddaughters before they died. What they didn't understand was that my daughters wanted nothing to do with it. Not after my ex-in-laws had blamed them for their father's death just days after the accident. If you hadn't told your mother about the affair, he wouldn't have been driving with that woman, my ex-mother-in-law had hissed at my eldest during a moment alone at the wake. This is on your shoulders. Those words branded themselves into my daughter's heart. She developed panic attacks, nightmares. Her grades slipped. Her therapist diagnosed her with PTSD. And still, the court case dragged on with my ex-in-laws demanding visitation rights at minimum. Life had to continue despite the legal battles. My youngest daughter's birthday approached, her first without her father. She had been quieter since his death, processing her grief in a more internal way than her sister. I wanted to give her something special, something normal in the midst of our abnormal lives. There's a weekend farmers market in our town that she always loved visiting. Local vendors selling fresh produce, handmade crafts, specialty chocolates and treats. I decided to surprise her with a birthday morning there, giving her a budget to spend on whatever treats she wanted while I browsed nearby stalls. "I'll be right over there if you need me," I told her, watching her face light up for the first time in months as she surveyed the chocolate stall. "Take your time. I should have known better. I should have stayed with her. I should have protected her." An hour later, my phone rang. My daughter's voice came through, small and broken. "Mom, there are these ladies. They won't leave me alone. They're saying really mean things about us." I ran across the market, my heart pounding in my chest, my elder daughter right behind me. And there they were, 6 women from my ex-in-law's church, surrounding my 15-year-old birthday girl, their faces twisted with righteous indignation as they lectured her about Christian family values and honoring her grandparents. "Should be ashamed of yourself, keeping those poor elderly people from seeing their grandsons. Your mother is turning you against your father's family. Those poor orphaned baby brothers need their sisters." My daughter was backed against a vendor's table, tears streaming down her face, clutching her small bag of birthday chocolates like a shield. She looked so young, so vulnerable. And something inside me, something that had been bending and stretching for months, finally snapped. I pushed through the circle of women, putting myself between them and my child. I told my elder daughter to take her sister to the car while I dealt with the situation. The women recognized me, of course. Some had known me for years through church functions, holiday gatherings, community events. "How dare you!" I didn't realize I was shouting until I saw people turning to stare. "How dare you corner a child on her birthday?" They were unmoved, convinced of their righteousness. One woman, a church elder with silver hair and a cross pendant that caught the morning light, stepped forward. "You need to honor your husband's parents," she said, her voice quivering with conviction. "It's what a good Christian wife would do." Wife. I wasn't even a wife anymore. My husband was dead. And before that, he had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. Yet here I was, still being measured by my adherence to wifely duties. The confrontation escalated until market security asked us all to leave. The women followed me to my car like a flock of judgmental vultures, calling out Bible verses about honoring parents and the sins of pride. I ignored them, focused only on getting to my daughters and driving away from that place. In the car, my birthday girl sat silently, her unopened chocolates in her lap, tears still falling. My elder daughter was shaking with anger beside her. And I realized, with perfect clarity, that this would never stop unless I did something drastic. That night, after my daughters were asleep, I messaged an acquaintance from the church, someone I'd always gotten along with, despite our different beliefs. I described what had happened at the market, hoping to understand why these women had targeted my daughter so aggressively. What he told me made my blood boil. My ex-mother-in-law had been weaving an elaborate fiction through the church community. According to her, I was a cold, unnatural mother who had refused to accept the twins because they were boys. She claimed the other woman had been our surrogate because I couldn't have more children, a compassionate soul who had given me the gift of more children that I had cruelly rejected. In her twisted narrative, I was now keeping her and my ex-father-in-law from seeing any of their grandchildren out of spite, while also trying to steal their inheritance. She conveniently left out the part where my ex-husband had cheated, or that I had been the primary breadwinner, or that they had inherited his personal accounts and life insurance. Most cruelly, she had portrayed my daughters as confused children being manipulated by their vindictive mother, rather than traumatized teenagers who had discovered their father's betrayal themselves. I sat at my kitchen table that night, reading through screenshots of the church's Facebook group, seeing the sympathetic comments, the prayers for my hardened heart, the offers to intervene on my ex-in-law's behalf, and something cold and calculating took over. I had been protecting my ex-husband's memory for my daughter's sake. I had been discreet about the details of our separation, careful not to disparage their father despite his betrayal. I had swallowed my rage when my ex-in-laws blamed my children for their father's death. I had been patient, reasonable, proper. And where had it gotten us? My daughter cornered and crying on her birthday. My family portrayed as villains in a narrative crafted by people who should have been supporting us through our grief. No more. Throughout our divorce proceedings, I had meticulously documented everything. Text messages between my ex and his mistress. Email exchanges where he confessed the affair to his parents. Financial records showing money diverted to support his second family. Photos that left no doubt about the nature of his relationship with this other woman. Most damning of all were the messages from my ex-in-laws, not just to me, but to my daughters. Messages calling them ungrateful and disloyal for siding with me. Messages blaming them for their father's death. Messages referring to them as bastards compared to the legitimate grandsons they were fighting for. I had kept all of this private, locked away in digital folders and printed copies in my lawyer's office. Evidence for a divorce that death had rendered unnecessary. But now, I saw another purpose for it all. The church my ex-in-laws attended had one cardinal rule above all others. Adultery was unforgivable. In their theology, it was the ultimate betrayal, one my ex-mother-in-law had carefully obscured with her surrogate story. The community that was now shunning us would have a very different reaction if they knew the truth. I spent hours organizing the evidence, selecting the most unambiguous examples. Messages that couldn't be misinterpreted. Photos that told their own story. The timeline of discovery, betrayal, and aftermath. I wrote nothing, added no commentary. The raw facts would speak for themselves. The next morning, I drove to a high-end print shop in the next town over. I wanted quality, glossy paper, professional binding, clear images. I wanted it to look official, irrefutable. I spent more money than I should have, watching as the clerk collated and bound multiple copies of my ex-husband's infidelity into neat, professional folders. At home, I added one final touch, designing covers that mimicked the church's hymnal books. Inside the front cover, I placed the most damning photo, my ex-husband and his mistress embracing in our family living room, with their names clearly labeled beneath. There could be no mistaking her for a surrogate. She looked nothing like me, and the intimacy in the image spoke volumes. I made 15 copies. One for each church elder, one for the pastor, and extras for the gossip mill I knew would spread the information faster than any official channels. Sunday morning arrived crisp and clear. I dressed carefully, not in church clothes, but in a simple, dignified outfit that would not draw attention. I arrived 30 minutes before service, when the church was mostly empty except for the early volunteers. At the back of the sanctuary was a table where they kept extra hymnals, Bibles, and prayer books for visitors. I placed my binders there, neatly arranged, indistinguishable from the other materials until opened. Then I left, nodding politely to the greeter at the door as if I belonged there. I didn't attend the service. I didn't need to. By that evening, my phone was buzzing with messages from my church contact, updating me on the rapidly unfolding drama. The binders had been discovered during the service. At first, people thought they were new prayer materials. Then gasps echoed through the sanctuary as the contents became clear. The photo of my ex-husband with his mistress. The text messages planning their rendezvous. The financial records. The cruel messages to my daughters. The pastor had tried to maintain order, but the damage was done. My ex-in-laws, sitting in their usual front row seats, became the center of a storm they couldn't control. The congregation that had rallied around them now turned accusatory. The lie about surrogacy crumbled under the weight of irrefutable evidence. By Monday morning, the church's Facebook group was ablaze with righteous indignation, not directed at me, but at my ex-in-laws for their deception. People who had confronted my daughter at the market were now sending apology letters to my home. The pastor himself reached out, offering support and counseling for my daughters. Incredibly, some still found ways to blame me, suggesting that if I had been a better wife, my husband wouldn't have strayed. But overall, the narrative had shifted dramatically. My ex-in-laws were now the ones being shunned, their sob story exposed as manipulation. My ex-mother-in-law posted a self-pitying message on her social media about being abandoned in her time of need, about how no one respected elders anymore, about how her great son would have taken care of them had he lived. It received almost no sympathy. Their custody case for my daughters weakened significantly. The church members who had planned to testify on their behalf withdrew their support. Our court date approached with my position substantially strengthened. I received 2 handwritten apology letters addressed to my daughters from women who had been at the market, and, bizarrely, an invitation to join the church community, as if exposing my ex-husband's infidelity had somehow made me more compatible with their values. My daughters had mixed reactions to what I'd done. My eldest was grimly satisfied, feeling that justice had finally been served. My youngest was more conflicted, worried about the public exposure of our family's private pain. But both agreed on one thing: they felt safer knowing that my ex-in-law's support system had collapsed. I have moments of doubt about my actions. Was I right to expose my ex-husband this way? To tarnish his memory so publicly? Was I right to destroy my ex-in-law's standing in their community? Would a better person have found a more private way to resolve this? But then I remember my daughter's birthday tears. I remember the panic attacks, the nightmares. I remember being called an unfit mother for refusing to accept my husband's infidelity. I remember my ex-father-in-law's threat that they would never stop trying to get their grandchildren back. I'm not sorry I did it. I'm only sorry it was necessary. The custody case was dismissed last week. My ex-in-law's lawyer advised them that continuing would only harm their reputation further. They've withdrawn from the church community entirely, apparently planning to move to a neighboring state where my ex-father-in-law has a brother. My daughters are doing better. Therapy helps. Time helps. The knowledge that they don't have to fear encountering their grandparents or their church friends at every turn helps most of all. As for me, I'm learning to live with the person I've become, someone capable of meticulous, calculated revenge when pushed too far. Someone who will protect her children at any cost. Someone who refuses to be painted as a villain in someone else's redemption story. I don't know if what I did was right. I just know that when those women cornered my daughter on her birthday, something fundamental shifted inside me. All the polite restraint, all the careful consideration of others' feelings, all the protection of my ex-husband's reputation, it all gave way to a mother's fierce determination to end the threat to her children. Was it petty? Perhaps. Was it excessive? Maybe. Was it necessary? Absolutely. My ex-in-laws tried to use their church community as a weapon against us. They never imagined I would turn that same weapon back on them with such devastating precision. They underestimated what I was willing to do to protect my daughters. They won't make that mistake again. And neither will I. I've learned that sometimes the only way to stop bullies is to expose them completely. Sometimes the only peace comes after the war. Sometimes the only way forward is through the fire. We're healing now, slowly but surely. Building a new life that isn't defined by betrayal or loss. Moving forward one day at a time. But I keep those binders. One copy, locked in my desk drawer. Insurance against the day my ex-in-laws might decide their embarrassment has faded enough to try again. A reminder that I am not the passive, accommodating woman they thought they could bully into submission. They created this version of me. And they can live with the consequences.